I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by Prize Picks, powered by Game Time, and for this episode, powered by all of your Patriots questions as they head into the final week of the 2024 season. They head into this one 3-13 after last weekend's 40-7 loss to the LA Chargers. Not a good one, Taylor. I saw you make that face. As we know, it was not their best performance by any means, but we're on to the Buffalo Bills here. So as we do every single Wednesday here. Oh, and first and foremost, as I look at the calendar, it is Wednesday. It is a new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2025. Happy New Year, Taylor. Happy New Year to everybody watching, and Happy New Year to everyone who submitted questions for today's Wednesday mailbag. And I think we're just going to get right on into it, Taylor. Nothing really to intro this show about, because we did our film, or as much of the film as we possibly could stomach on Monday. And that's kind of where we're at. So heading into this one, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of chatter about Jerod Mayo, his job security, his chances of making it as the Patriots head coach next season. We spoke to him about that today and all of the sort of rumors around him, I guess. And he basically said that he's focused on the Bills, which was the correct answer. And that's kind of where things should stand right now. But as we sit here, January 1st, season ending on Sunday, Taylor, we're going to start with this question from Dylan Gree9 on Twitter. And he asks, what are the chances Mayo actually gets fired? And I want to use this as sort of our segue into the Mayo job security conversation as a whole. Now, does he get fired? Does he stay? Do they keep the coordinators? Do they fire the coordinators? Antonio Gibson today mentioned that Alex Van Pelt has essentially become their scapegoat this season, and he doesn't find the criticism of him fair. Hunter Henry spoke up for AVP today. Drake Maye has all season. So I ask you, what do you think the chances are that Mayo does get fired? And sort of just to give your thoughts on the coaching staff situation as a whole and where you think they should go heading into next year.
Yeah, first of all, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Love the Happy New Year's messages in the chat. Feels like a nice little community. Love that. I we've been going back and forth on this because I think they should. I think if you have Vrabel, who can, all the promises that Jerod Mayo has made, all the goals that he has, Mike Vrabel can offer you that, but actually have a proven track record and a Coach of the Year trophy on his mantle, which right now it looks like, I don't know how Jerod Mayo gets one of those, in his trophy case, but I still don't think it's likely. I think the Crafts will still be very hesitant to be the kind of ownership group that fires somebody after one season, especially knowing they put Jerod Mayo and Elliott Wolf in difficult positions with a team that was very low on talent and also did not have a good enough reputation where they had an easy avenue to replenish talent in a lot of places, especially at the premium positions. So I do think they give him another chance. I hope they don't, to be very honest, because, again, I think Vrabel gives you that track record that you need where, you know what, sometimes things don't work out, and I just don't think Mayo has shown you nearly enough to deserve retaining his job. As unfair as it might be, it's still a business. This is not a charity, and I don't think Jerod Mayo has done a good enough job, especially because I think with his comments in the media, I think he has dragged the organization even further to not just being a team that's in the midst of a rebuild and is losing, which I think – if you're going into free agency is really where you care about your reputation most, I think, especially in the short term. And it's one thing to go in saying, yeah, we don't have the pieces, but we need them. It's another thing to be like, oh, Jerod Mayo, you mean the coach that I hear about on ESPN and NFL Network is constantly putting his foot in his mouth and, all that?
Right.
So, yeah, I think they should move on. But either way, whether you keep Mayo or whether you don't, I think Alex Van Pelt is or should be safe because of what you mentioned with the players. Throughout the season, we have consistently heard them speak up for AVP, not even always prompted. They will say, Hunter Henry is consistent with, I like the scheme. I like his energy. I like what he brings to the room. It's clear that while he does bring that positive culture vibe that you were hoping for when the offense was such a disaster over the past couple of seasons, I think he also does bring a bit of that still disciplinarian, where he's not going to MF you up and down and be like Bill O'Brien, where he's just popping off, but he's not going to accept anything less than the best. And we've seen glimpses of that, where when they have repeat mistakes week in and week out, he'll say, like, yeah, no, that was BS. That was not acceptable. And you can see that he's not okay with it. Covington, on the other hand, I do not think is safe, because with the praise that Hunter Henry gave AVP, And me going on Twitter and saying I haven't heard that for Covington, I decided, well, if I'm going to say that, let me at least give players an opportunity to defend Marcus Covington, give us some perspective that we may not have. We got from Dietrich Wise. He's got a great football IQ. I'm impressed with how he's grown, going from defensive line, linebackers, back to defensive line, learning how things work in the back end, saying he knows how to counter offensive formations. They have good conversations when Wise wants to know why they're doing X, Y, Z. John Jones, who spoke out after last week's game and said that he didn't think that some coaches were, this isn't word for word, but basically said some coaches weren't doing enough and really pulling their weight. I asked him, okay, well, DeMarcus Covington, what has he done to keep you guys afloat or, what have you? And he really kind of just deferred to the fact that it was Covington's first season and that this was the first defensive coordinator they've had who wasn't Bill Belichick. We know that, Steve Belichick and Jerod Mayo did have co-defensive coordinator responsibilities where Mayo led a lot of the meetings and then Belichick was the one who really called the plays, but everything funneled through Bill Belichick.
Right.
Kind of gave him that pass, but he didn't really say a whole lot that Covington really brought. There wasn't anything about what happens on game days. And it just feels like if there's anybody who gets scapegoated, it's got to be Covington. Because not obviously both sides of the ball have a talent issue. They have inexperience. They've had to deal with injuries and rotations. All of that's understandable. At least with Van Pelt, you can see what he's trying to build. There are areas where he could absolutely improve, but you're like, you know what? I see the vision. I think if you had league average players across the board, I think this would look different. I think this would at least be a respectable offense that's maybe not super consistent because of the talent, but they're not inconsistent because it feels like they're unprepared or just bad. The defense constantly feels like they're behind. Mm-hmm. It never feels like they really are keyed in on what's going on. It doesn't feel like they fly around the same way. There's been spurts where effort's not been great. And I think that's where you can be critical at times, but it's not to the degree where it's like, oh, this is a total abject failure. It's really more that they just don't seem like they're ready from week in to week out. And it isn't just because of the inexperience, because you have veterans that are messing up pretty egregiously on a somewhat regular basis, even if it's not necessarily the same guys. So the way I see it, I think Mayo stays. I think AVP stays. Springer should be able to stay. And even if Vrabel did get the job, I think AVP and Wolf be safe because he just spent a year in Cleveland. Right. I'm sure he has a decent idea or could get one of AVP's deficiencies, what he does well, what value he brings. And you want to retain some of the things that were good. Obviously, the offense itself wasn't good, but I think the culture they're building on that side is positive. And Elliott Wolf, you say, hey, guys who've worked with him in Cleveland, is this a guy that I can trust? Should I give him at least another year to fix this? If you're not confident, make the move. But we've said this, it's very rare to fire a GM after year one. So wrap this in a bow. I hope we see them move on from Mayo just because I want this to be a serious organization again. I don't think it's likely. And the only way that you fix that issue of not being great at the head coach level is to take the Eagles approach. You got to load up on talent. You got to surround that head coach with a lot of experienced guys with track records in the NFL who you truly believe in, because if you run it back with anything close to the defense that we see this year, I just don't know how you take any step forward. Also, if you keep Mayo, I'm not even being a jerk or trying to be funny. PR, like get him in a masterclass, whatever it is. I don't know, but seriously, get him to be able to be himself to a degree while also not putting the organization in bad spots where you look bad on a national level.
Yeah, I shockingly, as I do, continue to go back and forth on whether they will ultimately fire Mayo or keep Mayo. Right now, I'd lean that they're still probably going to keep him, but if they do, there's going to be and has to be serious changes around the guy. And the main one being defensive coordinator. Now, I do also think that AVP deserves to stay. And I like the connection between him and Vrabel with Cleveland. That sort of starts to make sense. And he's worked with those types of offensive coaches before. Matt LaFleur. Yeah, West Coast guys, LaFleur, Arthur Smith. And so it would be an easy transition for Vrabel. Ultimately, I think they should go after Mike Vrabel. He's the culture setter. It's everything you just said. And I'm totally on board with it. There comes a point in time where, ownership is going to have to look themselves in the mirror and say, is the only reason we're keeping Jerod Mayo because of the hunch we had not only a year ago, but the 5 years ago, the Israel trip, all of the stuff that they've propped this guy up to be, is the only reason is because we don't want to look bad for putting ourselves behind this guy. And if that's the only reason, you have to just admit you were wrong and bite the bullet. Good organizations. And I want to shout out Greg Bedard for this idea because I was listening to his podcast also on the Patriots Press Pass CLNS network. So if you haven't checked that out as well, but he sort of mentioned how good organizations handle these types of situations and can bite the bullet and admit they were wrong. And the one he brought up was the San Francisco 49ers, where they had success with Jim Harbaugh. And then that started to sort of fizzle out and they fired Harbaugh. They brought in Jim Tomsula for a year. He was a one and done. They didn't like it. They tried Chip Kelly. He was a one and done. They didn't like it. They pulled the plug, admitted they were wrong twice before finally landing on Kyle Shanahan. And now Kyle Shanahan has had the success that he's had in San Francisco. Now, it has been perfect, but they went to Super Bowls under Harbaugh. They went to 2 Super Bowls under Shanahan. They've become or they've stayed as a steady franchise because ownership admits they were wrong with some of the hires. And so I think it's okay if they ultimately say, you know what, we tried this and we didn't like it. I think in the long run, looking 5 years, 10 years ahead, they'll look back on this and realize it was a mistake to ultimately keep Jerod Mayo. So obviously we'll see what happens. But as of right now, in my opinion, it looks like I don't think they're going to fire him just yet. We do have a nice super chat here from Commander Ray. So shout out Commander Ray. Nice New Year's present here on Patriots Daily. And he asks, we'll stay on the coaches. That's going to be a majority of this show. I know most people aren't really talking about the Bills right now. Then we'll talk about the
we're not talking about the Bills backups, bro.
We'll talk. Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about the approach to the Bills game and whether guys will sit or play or whatever. But Commander Ray asks, have the young players failed the coaches, or has the coaching staff failed the players? Example, is Polk actually bad, or is it poor coaching? And I asked this question on Twitter, and I don't even know if I know the answer. I sort of just threw it out there, where the Ladd McConkey comparison with Jalen Polk. Now, would Ladd McConkey look like what he looks like in LA in New England? Or like, is it a talent evaluation thing, or is it a player development issue that's going on with these young draft picks and the players versus coaches? What's your kind of take on this whole situation?
I think it's player development, because Ladd McConkey, the reason he seemed like such a surefire player, and the reason he slid was because, one, the back issue, not insignificant. It's why Gronk fell out of the first round out of Arizona. And also the size thing, where it's like, all right, he's probably more of like a pure slot. He can play that Z, but you're not like lining him outside all the time, right? It's like a Julian Edelman type of guy, where it's in a stack, close to the line of scrimmage, try to get him off press looks and things like that. I think McConkey is the kind of player this receiver room needs, where he didn't need a ton of development. He knew how to run routes. He knew how to get open. He had a very good feel for the game. And that's why I think veterans need to be added. Like, you need, I don't think that you've seen enough from the receiver coaches where, like, it doesn't seem like a coincidence that Kayshon Boutte obviously got better in year 2, but that seemed more like he got his head on straight. But then he's also had a drive problem. He also has had effort problems where it seems like he's not finishing routes. Also an issue for him in college. Demario Douglas, great against man, but it seems like still when it comes to zone coverage, broken plays, he doesn't necessarily know what to do all the time. And then obviously you got the 2 young receivers who were guys that, Jalen Polk, for one, needed to work on his separation, but was very good at the catch point. Javon Baker also had a lot of things needed to work on, but had a ton of physical tools and a lot of instinctive things were like downfield, his ball skills, knowing how to win at the catch point. Those things he had, but he needed to be more refined. So receiver-wise, I think the coaching staff has really not been able to maximize the young receivers. The rest of the offense, I think, schematically, I think it means something when the older players are the ones doing everything right for the most part. Like, even since had the turnovers, obviously that's not been great. There have been mental mistakes. The tight ends are doing well. The running backs were doing well for a while until, obviously things are going downhill this week. And the offensive line has been what it is, of course. Defensively is where I feel like maybe coaching fails the players, and not even really position coaches necessarily. It feels like a top-down thing, where the only players who are consistently decent are the corners for the most part. And even those guys are like just one of the position groups that are most removed from the core of the defense. You're pretty much on an island a lot of the time. If it's really like safety, linebacker, defensive line, where you're just like, ugh, feels like they're not really keened in on what's going on necessarily. So it's a tough question. But I'd say receivers, it definitely feels like the coaching hasn't really done a lot to help them. Although I think Dan Pelt has put them in good positions. They just don't always capitalize. But defense, it does feel like from a top level, they have kind of not really put themselves in great positions. But then you got like safeties. Del Pettis is playing pretty well. Alex Austin for 2 years straight. Not been like perfect or anything, but it's been playing pretty well for you. Like Christian Ellis is a pretty inexperienced defensive guy. he's inconsistent, but in ways that you understand. So yeah, it's a tough question to ask, and we don't know directly. But I think defense and receivers, you could probably say they're not really getting a ton of help from the coaching.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, on this one, I just wanted to throw this in there. We already kind of answered this. This was from earlier, but am I alone in thinking Mayo and AVP should keep their jobs? And on the fence with Covington, no, you're not alone. I think that's sort of I shouldn't say the majority. I think the majority think that Mayo should go. But if he does stay, I think most would agree that it should be AVP that stays over Covington for sure. But then we've talked about this, and we talked about it a little bit earlier on today, Taylor, when we were down in Foxborough. What are the positive reasons / arguments for keeping Mayo through next season, besides not making ownership look bad? What, like, can you pull anything right now that tells you, okay, maybe they should keep this going?
It's tough, especially at this point in the year, because before the bye week, I would have said they were ready coming out of training camp. I thought that they really did show signs of improvement, like the penalty issue, where it was kind of up and down, but you did see that when he really got down on it, they improved. So like training camp, getting them ready for week 1, the games that they did bounce back after some bad losses early to mid-season, that hasn't happened recently. And maybe, if you really want to play devil's advocate for Mayo, you could say, hey, it's later in the season. The mentality is kind of different. That Bills game may have been everything they had left in the tank. Short week against the Chargers. Like, you could make excuses if you really wanted to.
Right.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate here just for the sake of argument. If we're talking about the last few weeks, I think it's that there isn't a full-on, like, people openly questioning or criticizing Mayo. That's not nothing, because it's happening for, it seems like Covington, it's happening for players where they're calling each other out, but no one is really calling out Mayo. And that's it.
That is it. I think that's it. The only other thing I'm sort of scraping at the bottom of the barrel is they seem to answer after getting embarrassed every single time. And the embarrassments kind of like X that out, where, okay, great. You get, you have a bad game, but then you come back strong, but don't have the bad game in the first place, and don't give yourself the ability to need to come back stronger. But, even after Arizona, we sat on post game and we had these same Mayo conversations after that Arizona game. And then they came out and played Buffalo really tough 2 weeks ago. And he kind of got that stuff back. And it happened after they went over to play in London against Jacksonville. They came back the next week and had a better showing. So every time it feels like rock bottom, he does get the guys to come back and play. But if that's the only reason, that and the ownership looking bad, I'm sorry, cut the cord. And I think that's just kind of where we're at right now.
And it's the only reason he gives us, because Mike Reese and other reporters have given him an opportunity to be like, hey, man, what do you do well? Defend yourself.
Right.
And all he says is guys come into work and competing, and that means a lot. It's like, bro, like, Chooks quit on you. And I know that's just one example.
I know.
That's so out there. If anything, like, everyone loves to put the Chooks thing on Elliott. I put that of anything on Mayo, because what he told me as the last person, at least that I know, that he spoke to before he left the team, which is when he was like, yeah, I just don't feel comfortable at left tackle. And I'm not making excuses, and I know I didn't play well enough, but, like, I just do not feel comfortable there. And he said that and it seems like I would find it very hard to believe that he didn't have any conversations with the coaches about, like, seriously, I don't want to do this. And if he did, like, hey, that's on him or whatever, but it still feels like a much worse indictment on coaching than it does on the guy who signed him, as Chooks being a league average starter. So, yeah, all Mayo's been able to tell us is, hey, the guys show up and they work. And sure, that's not nothing. Like Gibson has said many, many times, I've been in locker rooms where guys throwing the towel midseason. We haven't done that.
Right.
And that truly is, if we are going to be critical of Mayo, we have to say that's a feather in his cap. My opinion, that ain't enough, because players they're gonna play for Vrabel too. It's like anything good you could say about Mayo, you can also say about Vrabel, and he showed it over multiple seasons. Also surrounded himself with good coaching as that CEO type, but was also hands-on and had a very good pulse on the organization. His biggest issues were that he didn't get along with the front office.
Right.
And if he and Wolf are on the same page and they have the same dynamic that Mayo and Wolf have, then, like, genuinely, what benefit do you have of bringing Mayo back? Because anything you can say positively about him or his messaging or what his goals are, you say the exact same thing about Mike Vrabel, who has a Coach of the Year trophy.
The only reason he'll be back is because Robert and Jonathan want to stay the course on what they said before the season. And they have the right to do that as ownership. I just think that it's not the right decision. I think even deep down, lie detector tests on those guys, they know it's not the right decision, but they still want to stand their ground because they've all admitted that it was going to be a long process. But there's more, like,
they also set a standard. Mayo set a standard.
Right.
They set a standard of getting better, showing tangible improvement.
True.
Like, my dude, if the only thing keeping you here is that players didn't quit on you, which I did say, to be fair, I said that's like the last straw where it's like completely out of the window. But like,
losing the locker room,
we're
right?
Literally right
We're
there.
right
Like,
there.
maybe hasn't lost the locker room. He's not close to doing that exactly, but literally everything else is bad. So it's like, all right, do you really need it to be a complete dumpster fire where you're talking about maybe by October next year, things are another just complete shitstorm and you got to weather it for another few months.
Right. I know you just mentioned next October. I want to get to that. I want to get to another awesome, generous super chat here. We have a lot of questions coming in as well. So this may, well, I don't know. We'll see how long we can take this thing. But first, before we get into the rest of it, where am I? I want to talk about our friends at Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long with us here on Prize Picks. It's playoff time. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks. Again, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. They also offer MasterCard now on top of Venmo cash outs for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Think Lamar Jackson will get more than 250 passing yards next week? Will Mahomes pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns? Come cook up hot takes with your friends on Prize Picks and win that real money throughout the football season. All you got to do to join us is download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Oh, where's that new layout? Where was it?
Oh, I got it.
You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
There we are. Okay.
Can I say one thing that I was just thinking of?
Absolutely.
So another issue that I have is the whole personnel thing and how, and maybe we'll touch on this. I'll more talk on the response where conversation has been about, all right, is Mayo going to, play all the starters? Is he going to give young guys opportunities? Because he said that he wanted these young guys to show what they had so they could have an impression of them going into the offseason.
Yeah.
Yet today, when I asked him about that and what kind of opportunity is this for the young guys, potentially whatever, we'll see how the game goes. Okay. Then he's asked about the conversations and all that. And he says that he, Wolf, and Kraft have consistent conversations about personnel. They have not talked about how things are going to work out personnel-wise in the game. How does that make sense, man? You keep talking about wanting to play the young guys, getting them more experience, yet you have Marte Mapu was a healthy scratch twice. Kyle Duggar's playing on one good ankle, and you won't even acknowledge the fact that these young guys do need more reps. Like, this is the one time where I will understand you putting Jalen Polk and Javon Baker out there, even if they're not performing super well in practice, because you're playing backups. To not even have had the conversation, as long as we know, because we know that he says one thing and then something else happens behind the scenes sometimes, but to not have had the conversation, and then like when I tried to, maybe I'm not trying to say this like I'm taking it personally, I don't care. But really, to not even talk about what great of an opportunity this is for those young guys or even really acknowledge it is so bizarre to me. I was thinking about that because I'm kind of going through the transcript. I was going through the transcript during the ad read. It's like Tom Curran also gave him an opportunity to talk about the culture he's installing. He didn't say anything. Just like, even when he doesn't say anything now, it's just like, but dude, we're at the end of the season. You need to be giving us better answers. Doesn't mean you need to be making headlines for bad reasons, but like, take more accountability other than just like, hey, I need to get better. Like, no shit, bro. Like, I need to hear where you feel like you need to grow. And it felt like he kept getting questions that were giving him opportunities to make himself look better. And he just went to Belichick and, I'm not going to say anything. Dude, this is not the time. It feels like a total lack of awareness.
For context on that, he was asked today, over the last couple of days, have Elliott Wolf and ownership, or anyone in ownership rather, had input on the approach when it comes to who will play on Sunday? He said he's in constant communication with Elliott and ownership. I've never been a part of a team as a player or a coach where we haven't gone out there and tried to win the game. So those conversations haven't happened.
Like, dude, no one is saying to tank. You are
Right.
playing backups. This is not the same conversation. And you're not Bill, where he can give this response and it's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
It's Bill. Like, you need to be more transparent in these types of things because these are going along with messages that you sent. And you're not even going to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, the Bills are playing their backups and publicly stated it. Or maybe, knowing Mayo, honestly, maybe he just doesn't know.
Right.
Maybe that's factoring into it too. I don't know. But it just feels so bizarre not to acknowledge that young guys do need to get more reps. And you have a prime opportunity with no possible win. You're talking about, oh, we want to win the game. We know you want to win the game. But, like, this is a unique situation that it feels like should be acknowledged. But you know what? Maybe you just didn't want to screw up. Maybe I'm being too critical now because it feels like this is all just coming to such an aggressive head. But, like, I just felt like that press conference and his answers did not do nearly enough when he was getting opportunities to kind of give himself more or get more understanding, at least from the fan base.
Sure. All right. We will get into that as far as just their no, that's fine. I know you had to say it and you were reading the transcript. We'll get into more of the game plan ideas this weekend in Buffalo. But first, let's keep it on the Vrabel stuff. And awesome. We appreciate you, Jeff, for the super chat here. If Patriots can, hold on. If the Patriots can't get Vrabel, should they still fire Jerod Mayo? And follow up, will they lose draft picks if they hire Vrabel due to Rooney Rule or collusion? So if they do ultimately hire Vrabel, they're going to do it the right way, and not the right way, the right way. And that is still going through the process and interviewing guys. And they'll probably have the sham interview, which is too bad. And that's why the Rooney Rule stinks. But I don't think they're required to follow the rule if they make a move. If they fire Mayo, and if they're going to still have to interview a bunch of other people. They can't just bring in Vrabel. They're not even allowed to bypass it. So they probably won't lose draft pick conversation. I don't think they'll, unless they, launch an investigation and find that they somehow colluded and told him that he would have a job before they go into those, into those other interviews. But Taylor, if they can't get Vrabel, do you still think they should fire Mayo? Like, are you still on board with moving on from Mayo and trying, for a Ben Johnson or trying for any other head coach candidate out there? Or are you kind of hell-bent on Vrabel right now?
I think the league knows what goes on with the Rooney Rule. I don't think they would even launch an investigation unless it was very, very obvious or Flores, somebody complained. Exactly. So, yeah, I don't think that's on the table. I think obviously they have to interview people. I wonder if they would interview Flores because he's still in a legal battle with the NFL.
Yeah.
That's a little iffy, but he's one of him and Aaron Glenn would be great minority candidates to genuinely interview as defensive guys who have had a lot of success on teams that are very good right now. I think it would make perfect sense to sincerely interview them and see what their perspective is, what they could bring, all those different kinds of aspects. But honestly, I think if Vrabel wants the job, he gets it. I don't think there's any world where Mayo gets fired and Vrabel isn't one of the top guys in consideration and doesn't want the Patriots more than anything else because you got the quarterback. Ownership is going to be fine with you because, if you are Vrabel, I know I'm going to do my job. I don't think ownership's going to mess with it. And I think the Patriots, for the most part, do a pretty good job with that.
Right.
So you got that. You got the quarterback. You got money. You got draft picks. This is a great, great destination if you feel confident that ownership is going to handle you the right way, because obviously the Mayo thing would make things look a little murky.
That would kind of make me hesitate, honestly, if I'm Mike Vrabel. The idea that
but they're probably firing him for you. That's the thing.
I know, right? That is the thing. But then you look at it. There's a way to look at it if you're him, where, well, you're going to tell me all these things that we want you and we made this mistake and we're going to give you they'll probably give him some sort of runway where we know that the roster's not in a good spot, but we want to give you the opportunity to build it. They said those same things to Jerod Mayo a year ago, and they canned him after one bad season. So in Vrabel's mind, is he saying, well, what if things don't go my way next year and we end up 4-13 once again? Are you going to just fire me after 1 year? So I think
the comeback to that is well, at least we know that you can do this.
I agree.
Emphasize the fact that Mayo had no track record. We tried to give him a chance, and it was a literal disaster. By pretty much every definition other than the locker room openly calling him out, this is about as bad as it can get.
Yeah. It's tough.
Short of genuine Urban Meyer or really where you're physically assaulting people, or usually again you see these situations where you get fired mid-season.
Yeah.
So for a first-year coach, I feel like this is as bad as it really could be. Because even Dan Campbell, I don't know how discouraged people were after his first year, because I think his messaging was consistent, and I also think that you could see what he was trying to build. Whereas with Mayo, it just feels so flimsy, and I think that's the bottom line, is that he's inexperienced and seems like he's in over his head. I don't think that would be the case with Vrabel.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's move on to some free agency talk. Top 3 realistic free agent targets for the Patriots this offseason, Taylor. Where do you think they should turn to?
One, Patrick McCarry.
Okay.
From the Ravens. I think he gives you insurance at left guard and right tackle, 2 places where you're going to have second-year players that even if they play really well next week, he can't go into next season banking on them, I don't think. Like, these are 3rd and 4th round picks. You're hoping these guys become starters. That's what the 3rd and 4th round are for, but you can't lock it in. I think that's one realistic one. Darius Slayton is one that I really like. I've talked about a lot. Even if they sign T. Higgins, I think him and Darius Slayton give you some versatility, gives you some juice that you really need. 2 high character guys. I know we said that about KJ Osborne, but Slayton is a guy who actually does have explosiveness and has played well. He just has never had a good quarterback. Also was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Giants. I think that would be huge. T. Higgins, beloved in Cincinnati. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't even know I'm talking about him. Darius Slayton. I love that combination, but I think Slayton's somebody they really could get.
Yep.
Then I have to go on the defensive side of the ball. I'd say probably Josh Sweat. He's 28 years old, coming from the Eagles, has had success. Also 28. That was the age that Matt Judon was when he signed. And he still had a pretty good, he had a pretty good run in New England. So I would say those are my top 3 that if none of those guys got signed, I'd be pretty upset if it wasn't because they just signed somebody that was significantly better. But Slayton and Sweat are guys that in my brain, like, they should be penciled in. I don't see how you don't bring those guys when you need so much help at that position. And then, again, the offensive line stuff. I think Cam Robinson and Trey Smith are the guys you'd really like. Maybe Alaric, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But Jackson from the Rams, the left tackle, I think he's another ideal candidate. But I think maybe they go somewhere else. Maybe somebody throws some more money. And Patrick McCarry seems like he wouldn't be super expensive. But if they wanted to lean on their young guys, he's a very good insurance policy for whoever maybe isn't doing as well early on.
Yeah, I think the good the good news with them as far as entering free agency is, like, when you put realistic in asterisks, a lot of it is because, are they really going to be able to shell out cash to person or XYZ? But they are. They're the number one. They have the most cap space in the NFL next season.
In like $36 million.
Right.
And so, if the draft, I think it's like you want to save like $15 million or something like that. So you're talking about like a true like $120 million to spend.
Right. So they can actually do it. So anyone's realistic. Anyone is realistic if you're willing to pony it up and if people are willing to come here, which is the next question.
Yes. Why
would any free agent want to come here on a 3-win Jerod Mayo team? And I think it's a great question. I think that these are the types of questions ownership needs to ask themselves when they go into these when they go into this decision-making process after the season, because money talks. And if you really do vastly overpay for guys, they're probably going to come here. But if you're in a bidding war between 2 teams, why would guys want to come to this nonsense organization, which is what it kind of feels like right now? So does this factor in? And I guess to answer the question, Taylor, why would guys want to come here?
Drake Maye.
I know. That's it. It's Drake Maye. That's the only answer right now.
And because you don't have any assurances from leadership. You don't know what Jerod Mayo is going to be. At least last year you could say, hey, this defense is really good. We just need help on offense. You need help on both sides of the ball. There's nothing you can sell outside of we have the quarterback. We have assets. We are going to fix these things. It's like, at least, again, last offseason you said we get the quarterback and we want to build around him, right? But now it's not just building around the quarterback. It's also we have to fix the defense. Oh, by the way, that's actually a good point. Our facilities for the next 2 years aren't going to be very good. We're trying, but you're going to kind of have to suck it up for the next year or two. You've got the fact that there's the tax, obviously, where I know the Patriots for certain players will pay that tax to kind of offset whatever offer they got somewhere else. But like, this is not an ideal destination, weather-wise, location-wise, coaching and winning-wise. There's really no reason that anybody would want to come here unless it's just like, damn, that's a lot of money and I can't say no. And maybe if someone has an Alex Van Pelt connection, I know that helped with Austin Hooper because he really liked playing for AVP in that Cleveland offense and like how he ran things. KJ Osborne, I'm starting to think he just didn't have any good offers anywhere else. I'm
Definitely.
like,
He was a late ad. He wasn't really
Right.
signed. There was no really market for him. It didn't seem like.
exactly. So, and that's why I am so hesitant to give Mayo another year. Because if you go into free agency and can't sign people because they don't take you seriously,
Right.
This is the year that you really, if they spend the money wisely, they fill all of their, especially like the premium positions, edge rusher, wide receiver, left tackle. If you can address all of those in free agency and then also get guys to fill the other holes, because when you look at it, they have like 7 openings. You can fill them with starting caliber talent, maybe not elite talent, but like good players. Then you go into the draft and you truly get best player available, maybe stack up with young defensive talent, which I think they sneakily need. We're not talking about that. I think we are talking about that a good amount. It's not getting talked about enough how much help they need on defense, even if, you get guys healthy next year. So it's a scary situation. And I hope that, like you said, the Crafts are asking around, and I hope that Wolf is being very honest with them in his assessment of like, I don't know that I can do my job if you keep Mayo. It's going to make me look bad.
And the part about paying the Massachusetts tax, I get that it's a good thing that it seemed like ownership was willing to try and do that with Calvin Ridley, so they're actually willing to overpay
And you can
and max guys out. But also, you might not have to pay that if you're an attractive destination, because guys would just want to come here for a decent price because of a new head coach or Mike Vrabel, the ability to play with Drake Maye. And so, it's a good thing, but also if you switch things up, you're not going to that eats into the rest of your cap if you're overpaying for guys for other things. So it's just, there's no attraction. There's no attraction. It's a tough spot to be in. It really is. And I do feel for Mayo. We sit on here and we, rip through him, and he's not in an easy situation. And
No.
He's not in an easy situation. He's never done this before. And he was given this job a lot earlier than expected. To not have connections around the league, to not be able to bring guys in, to be under fire constantly now. I do feel for him. I almost feel bad for him because he wasn't put in an ideal situation to succeed. And this is just kind of where we're at this point. So,
and we even talked about in the car on the way to the stadium, how Ben McAdoo as your guy with head coaching experience, it's that's awesome in a lot of ways. But also somebody who had success.
I know.
Because McAdoo is very good in a non-head coaching role, and he does have that experience. Maybe could help Mayo avoid some pitfalls. But he also doesn't have the credibility of someone who knows what success looks like as the head coach.
Right.
And that would maybe help him a lot. And we were the ones who were saying how hard it was. That's why I don't really feel that bad that we've done a bit of an about face.
No,
because
of course.
we tried to defend him and give him, not even defend him. I struggle to say defend.
Just been realistic about it.
Right. I think we tried to say he's struggling, but realistically, you have to give him some ability to improve down the stretch. But then when he made all these promises post-bye week, things got worse. It's now, again, when we ran out of things to defend, it became, I'm sorry, dude. I know it wasn't easy, but I keep coming back to, if we didn't have to address his press conference mess-ups, I think there'd be way more patience surrounding Jerod. But the fact that even coaches, people who have coached before and listen to these press conferences are being oh my God, dude, stop saying these things. And it's continued. And he's Mr. Don't repeat the same mistakes.
Right.
He just looks like a massive hypocrite after this season in so many ways.
And it's hard. Sometimes I know you hate the criticism of, the media and how guys talk, because you're the X's and O's guys and you don't want to have to deal with this stuff. And in a vacuum, if you make these little gaffes, when he says Antonio Gibson is starting and then they start Ramondre Stevenson, if that happens once in a season, so be it. You messed up, but it's over and over and over and over and over again. It comes to a point where it's just unprofessional. It actually becomes a problem, and everything has spiraled on top of each other. And now it's what is this guy even doing? It just makes the entire operation look incredibly unprofessional. So having said that, we will listen to our friends over at Game Time here, and then we will wrap up today's show looking into some questions on how the Patriots are actually going to tackle this weekend's game against the Bills. We'll be right back. It's the holiday season, and that means it is also the best time to watch and attend your favorite sports games, and you can do so right now with the Game Time app. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, and that means when you bring people together at live events, The experience is that much better, and it's the perfect holiday gift. They also have their new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to live events even easier. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks, best feature. They also have all-in pricing. You toggle it on, and it shows you the exact price you're going to pay at checkout. No fees, no garbage, just the price right there on the app. They also have seat views. It gives you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy your tickets, and they also have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
Whoa, why is your camera
oh no, my expensive camera. There we go.
Oh, that's so funny. It is game time. It's time to wrap up the pod, but a quick look at the Game Time app right now. And let's see what you can get into Gillette Stadium for this weekend. Again, we talked about it on our Monday show. $41 right now on Game Time. So you look at it.
It's closer to Game Time.
Yeah, it'd probably go down closer to
hold off.
But 41's not bad to go and, frankly, root for a loss, which I think a lot of fans are going to do. The Fire Mayo chants, the boos last week kind of stunk, but all players.
No one gave their entire sections where you could see what color they were.
Right. I mean, to the team's credit and to Jerod Mayo's credit, they all said this week that, like the boos are warranted. Like these guys go and pay.
Except for teachers who kind of win at fans, and I was like, bro, that was not smart.
Not good. But hey, if you want to start chants, if you want to cheer them on, or if you want to just try and root for this team to lose and get the number one pick this weekend, you can do so, and you can get in on Game Time app right now, $41, and use code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's wrap it up here, Taylor. Will the Patriots use this game like they would, a preseason game? Where do you think they go with this? Are guys going to play? Are guys going to sit? Is Maye going to start? It sounds like Maye's going to start. I think we both agree that he should start and then probably sit second half, 3/4, what have you. But how do you think they're going to actually go about it?
I'm not going to predict how I think they're going to go about it because I don't know what this team is thinking.
Fair.
I'm going to say what I would do. Me with all the credibility and whatnot. I would treat it like a preseason game because the Bills are treating it like a preseason game. Realistically, do you want to win? Yes, obviously. At the same time, I think you can do that if you give, your younger guys more time than they usually get in practice. Treat this truly like a preseason game because, one, I don't see what benefit there is to having Drake Maye play 60 minutes against backups. I'm sorry. I know you want him to get NFL experience. Bump that, dude. Give him a half for sure, maybe a few drives, because I do think he had a couple of rough games. Last week, I think, was his worst game where he fully played. Didn't fully play, obviously left because of suspected concussion. But I thought it was his least impressive performance this season, so would very much like to see him just finish on a high note, then get him the hell out of there. Like, I don't see what benefit there is to playing Kyle Duggar. I don't see what benefit there is to playing Mike Nwonu for a full game. If you thought it was appropriate to pull starters last week, I think that's what you have to do this week. For sure, like get them some early reps and all that. I understand that to a degree. But I also think it's kind of silly to just treat this like it's any other game when you just got blown out. You're not getting any more positive faith from the fan base. And I don't know if they're thinking about it, but I think if you're going to be self-aware, it's something you have to acknowledge because the perception would be we're throwing this game.
Right.
I don't think that's the perception when you have your quarterback. You don't want to get him injured. And again, you have several young players that you want to play a role for you next year who are going to be on the roster that you haven't seen a whole lot of and who would benefit even against backups from those reps just so you can see, okay, maybe if this is like, their preseason later in the year, what does it look like? Kind of a similar situation in that vein. So they should. Again, I just don't see how you justify. Maybe on defense, like I would say Godshaw is a guy, Anthony Jennings, maybe to a degree, Jelani Tavai. Christian Gonzalez probably isn't going to play. He's in concussion protocol. Again, Kyle Duggar. Those are the only defensive guys where I think, yeah, maybe you play them a couple series and pull them. The rest, I mean, you're already depleted. So you have backups mostly playing on defense, but also not a whole lot of guys that deserve to get that kind of treatment. And I don't think it's that hard to look your veterans in the eye and say, hey, you guys, you were part of this. We know what we have on the roster. Young guys, it's your time. What veteran is going to get mad at that? I know Godchild said, like, I want to play. You're really going to tell me he's going to make a fuss if you're like, hey, we need to get these reps to Eric Johnson or, Jeremiah Farms. You can justify it. You're not tanking. You're just making sure that you are seeing what you have, like you said you would. So, and that's another reason why the messaging for this weekend is frustrating me, because, like, you laid the groundwork to completely justify an approach of what I think they should do, maybe treating kind of like a preseason game. I don't know if they will, but I can tell you this: if Drake Maye plays wire to wire, it's going to be an interesting post-game show.
So that brings us to our last question here, and it is: if they do sit Drake Maye, do you think that implies Mayo's job is safe? As in, Mayo needs, at least what it seems, to not have this thing be a disaster. And so, in his mind and in ownership's mind, if you will, he should go out there and try and win this football game. And if he's not, and if they are using it as a development game and not necessarily caring about the scoreboard, and if it gets out of hand, so be it, because that's just kind of what this is. The score doesn't matter. So do you think that kind of implies that everyone's on the same page? They're going to see what they have in the young guys. Drake Maye's our guy, and also Jerod Mayo's our guy? Or is it kind of wishy-washy? Do you get what I'm kind of trying to say?
I get what you're saying. I don't think Drake Maye's status in this game says anything about Jerod's job security, to be honest. Okay. Like, if he's not having the conversations with ownership, if they do it, I don't think it's going to be something that ties into whether he's safe. I think he will want to play for a win, because I know he wants to play for a win, obviously, but I do think he's going to want to end on a high note, which, again, I get. I hope he understands the situation he's in right now. Like, obviously, you don't want to get blown out by backups, but if you lose to backups because you were playing a bunch of guys who have barely seen any action this game, like, you can explain that to ownership and be like, hey, we wanted to get a better idea. Because you just got blown out, bro. Like, if you blow out the backups after losing last week in the fashion you did, who cares? So, yeah, I don't think Maye's status necessarily ties into it. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe I'm not thinking about it enough. But yeah, I just don't see how this game has much of an effect on Mayo's job security. I think the only thing that could help him or lose him the job at this point is his plan for next season. And if he's willing to say, yeah, I need to surround myself with better coaching, I need more experience, I am not ready to do this on my own, and I do need more help. And if he shows that self-awareness and is willing to put the work in to find other guys and all that, awesome. If he doesn't, and there aren't sweeping changes that he wants to make outside of the offense, which, again, even the players have been saying is not the move. Like, even Hunter Henry saying they should get a chance to grow in this offense, get better.
Having a reset at this offseason. Yeah.
Right. I don't see that happening with the defense. I don't see what there is to get more comfortable in on the defense. So, yeah, I don't think Maye has anything to do with it, but I think Mayo's comments to ownership after the season need, and I'm sure that he doesn't have a plan right now because he's just he's drinking from a fire hose trying to end the season. But after that, when he gets the time to reflect, he needs to come at them and say, this is what I plan on doing. Just like what Belichick had before they mutually decided to part ways.
Yeah, right. And then Robert says, 6 months later on the Breakfast Club, oh yeah, I fired Bill Belichick.
Also, can't put all the crap on Mayo also for hurting the organization's credibility. Robert's did a pretty good job of that on his own as well, in just embarrassing fashion. God, the messaging from this team has been, from everyone who's not Alex Van Pelt or a 22-year-old rookie quarterback, the messaging from the leaders of this team has been just dreadful all year. And again, I didn't really want to talk about the drama stuff. I'm like, you know what? Kraft's doing his thing. That doesn't really affect our job when he's just talking crap about Bill and making him look bad. Hey, That's not on us. That's for other people to talk about. And when Mayo's kind of stumbling at the beginning and spilling orange juice on himself, you give him the pass. But man, now that everything is almost in the barn, it's just like, whew, this has been a rough season from a PR standpoint. As a PR major, by the way, I have a degree.
I think, where is it? See that? That's a master's degree in PR right there. Maybe we can.
Mine's not a master's, so actually, no, I'm not putting it.
I'll have a conversation with Jerod this cup. No, that is not my job. My job is to actually answer this question right in front of me. And I don't think that this week plays a part in Mayo's job either. I think the last taste in ownership and this team's mouth should be that game against the Chargers. And that's what they should be making decisions on. That and everything before that. I don't think this week matters with anything. I think this week is get through the end of the season, keep Drake May healthy, secure the number 1 pick if you can. Don't tank, obviously, but look at what you have. And that kind of gives ownership and Elliott Wolf a 30,000-foot view of what else we have outside of Drake May. And if Mayo gets these guys to play hard this week against the Bills backups and they win, I don't really care from an ownership standpoint. So I don't think his job would be safe with a win. I don't think sitting May this week makes it safe. I think everything's on the table still this offseason. I do ultimately think they probably keep him, but I don't think that this week should necessarily matter. So,
and think about it like this. Would you feel better if they won and Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Jaheim Bell, Joe Milton don't do anything? Or would you feel better if they lose by a decent margin or like by, whatever respectable, but Polk and Baker or like 2 or 3 young guys actually show more promise than you thought they had at this point? What would make you feel better?
I don't really care if Jalen Polk and Javon Baker pop off this week, though.
If they show some signs of life with 87 combined yards in 17 games.
Is that actually life, though? Is that actually...
If they just show, I think if literally Javon Baker shows anything, I think it makes people feel better because he's literally done nothing. I think if Jalen Polk, less so than Baker, but I do think if he does something positive, if Jaheim Bell, who would he have like 1 or 2 catches, hasn't done anything with them. I think if those young skill position players can do something, if Joe Milton comes in and has some really great passes, and you're like, oh, so the quarterback development's been good, another feather in Alex Van Pelt and TC McCartney's hat. Like, I just think the fan base would feel much better if this year's draft picks showed some signs of life versus if you beat a bunch of backups playing your starters. I don't think that does anything positive for you. Other than maybe like, oh, look, they're still fighting for Mayo. Well, you keep saying they're fighting for Mayo. Who gives a crap? I don't really care if they're still fighting in week 18. Honestly, I wouldn't be upset if they weren't fighting, to be very frank with you, because some guys are going to start making business decisions like it was implied that they were last year. So maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it would be much more beneficial to show signs from your young players than to beat a team of backups.
No, I'm with you. I agree. I was just playing devil's advocate on the idea that does a 100-yard week 18 game against the Bills backups actually make you feel better about Jalen Polk? I don't know. It's still nice.
Yes.
Baker, yes. I agree. So I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be interesting. We have another couple days to talk it out here, as we will on Patriots Daily. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for all your questions. Thank you for the super chats, the New Year's wishes, everything. We appreciate you and everyone who always follows along to the podcast. Myself and Taylor will be back here later on in the week as we continue getting through this final chapter of the Patriots season. So until next time, keep it real. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.